I kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure who I see, and I'm not sure who's going to be joining in the next couple of minutes, but we had a pretty significant turnout in terms of registration. So there should be almost 50 of us, and you can opt in and opt out in terms of video and audio and everything like that. But we've got a couple of really fun things that are happening tonight. They're firsts. So this is the first time we've ever combined the QA SIG and the PM SIG, which is pretty neat because those two disciplines are somewhat intertwined, not really the same thing, but they are related and they work together so often. It's also the first time we've had a virtual meeting instead of blocking out everybody during the discussion or during the presentation, that everybody can be seen and heard at all times if you decide to opt in with audio and video. And so that's pretty much the whole thing. It's it's a virtual meeting, so enjoy it. Enjoy the first time we've done it, and thank you for participating, everyone. And I'll turn this over to John to introduce our wonderful panel that we have assembled.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. A lot of you know me as the PM SIG chair. Years ago when I worked for Cordev, I was the QA SIG chair. I worked for eBay and have for about 12 years. I'm a program manager. With Shelley Dillon's cooperation, we started the PM SIG a couple of years ago. So it's fun to have the idea to combine the two SIGs. And I said, well, let's do a panel and focus on an interesting trend that you might have seen with the emergence of ChatGPT and other AI platforms, as well as this trend apparently for there to be a lot of layoffs going on with companies. And I'm trying to figure out a pattern, and I'm kind of flummoxed about it. But I thought, what if we got a consultant trainer, and we had a university professor, and we had a professional recruiter, and we got together and we talked about this trend. And so it just so happens that some of my favorite colleagues are in those roles, and you see them here tonight. The first is my brother James. The second is longtime colleague Robert Sabourin, professor at McGill, and then Cindy Pongo, who's a recruiter here at Cordev, who sponsors this session. And so the topic is the original title was So What and Now What? Your skills in these times of emerging AI and layoffs. And because everybody's heard of the Great Resignation or quiet quitting, where workers were like in control. They were confident and safe in their market value. But that seems to be giving way to almost a basic survival mindset in light of these recent trends. So I wanted to assemble the people in front of you and throw out a few questions to them first. Now, all of you are muted, and what I want to do is have everybody have my three panelists introduce themselves for a minute or two, and then I'll throw out the first question to them, and then we'll discuss it, and then a couple more questions. But by the middle of this session, I'll just declare, I'll find a way to kind of wrap up the discussion that we're on, and we'll just declare open season. And that's when you can unmute and ask any questions or raise your hand or put something in the Q&A frame. And then Shelley will help me moderate those questions as they come in. So, sounds good? All right, cool. All right, so first I'd like to introduce Robert Sabourin, who's been in the industry like 40 years in software development, very rich background. Rob, introduce yourself, a little about your background and your current role.
Right, so I've been involved in software engineering since the dawn of time. My first commercial release was June the 4th, 1982. It was a Quarto graphics package, which was, by the way, a windowing system that predates a lot of other ones. I worked in many areas of software engineering, and I don't want to sort of waste your time with that. But after many, many years of managing and building teams, I decided to form a consultancy and since about the year 2000, I've been consulting and training in the areas of software engineering with a particular passion about software testing. I've been invited to teach at the university. I'm an adjunct professor of software engineering. I teach a course in software testing that is a mandatory undergraduate course for every single person who gets a degree in software engineering or computer engineering at McGill University. They have to take and pass the course. I'm very proud of that accomplishment. By the way, there's very few of those in the world, and that'll make a difference if we can achieve that. Relevant to the topic that Jon brought up, I've been doing 3 activities. I work on community building in a lot in the context-driven software testing world. And one of the things I'm working on is a workshop on evolving software testing fundamentals. And I think part of the answer of what we should do about jobs is focus a little bit on fundamentals and how that can add value. Second thing I'm doing is a huge project working with the testing tribe in India, building a huge collection of lessons for people who are going through the interview process in software testing. This is based on reviewing real interview questions from real practitioners, and then working with my partner, and this is Lee Hawkins in Australia, and we drill down and have a beautiful process to put together. This is going to be delivered as training to the community when we're done with it. So I'm doing a lot of research with that. And the third thing is I meet with practitioners all the time. And so recently I've been talking to people who have been laid off, are laying off people, and are victim of being laid off. And yesterday, for example, I spent 90 minutes reviewing this issue with Google Canada. And I learned about their algorithmic approach to selective layoffs, which was interesting. So I think I'd love to contribute to this dialogue, Jon, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome, good. I meant to say, Robin, you helped me with this inadvertently, is with your bio, maybe a 1 to 2 minute statement about your platform on this topic, on either AI or upskilling or staying current in this environment. So that was good, Rob, that you made those comments. Cindy, I'd like you to go next. So introduce your role and background, and a little bit, a few statements about your take on either AI or these layoffs happening and staying current.
Jon, and you were speaking to me, so that's great.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm here recruiting for CoreDev, and I've been working with CoreDev now for a little over 7 years. I started actually in the creative world, and I've been around a long time as well. So one of my fondest memories when it comes to technology and kind of adopting new technology as it relates to what we're talking about tonight is when I had to convert a whole team of very manual graphic designers who were used to having 10, 12-foot long boards in front of them where they were doing manual paste up, and converting them to the very first Macintosh computer and introducing them to a software called Quark Express. So I'm super excited to be here, and thank you, Jon, for hosting this or being here and leading this. I think we're at just a very unique position in the industry right now, both from AI perspective and just the job search in general. The candidates I'm working with, they have a lot of questions, and I think tonight we'll be able to answer a few of those. So I'm super excited. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Cindy. Okay, James, you're up.
Well, I've also been in the industry 40 years. My first day as a professional video game programmer was January 1st, 1983. And my first release was, I think, February of 83. So I'm a little behind, Rob. I joined the testing industry when I was hired as the youngest manager in the Apple R&D division in 1987. I was 20 years old on the day I was hired. The interns were older than me. And I'm a high school dropout. So I was told in 82 that I had no market value. And it turned out Silicon Valley welcomed me with open arms when I finally wandered over there. And before that, I was hired out of a office supply company where I was selling Apple computers unsuccessfully, never sold a single one in the 6 months I worked there. And a guy walked in and said, "Can you program?" And he hired me because I was a cheap programmer. a cheap teenage programmer. So years later, I wrote a book called Secrets of a Buccaneer Scholar, which is how I, as a high school dropout, compete with college graduates, and how my learning is an ongoing process, of course, tinged with that little feeling of intensity that comes from never having gotten any kind of a degree or certification, which gives me a little bit of hunger, a little bit of nervousness that I use to fuel myself through my career. I also wrote a book about software testing back in 2002 called Lessons Learned in Software Testing. So yes, I'm a privileged old white guy, but also I am not privileged in a certain sense, not just that I'm left-handed and kind of ADHD, but that I have to go around without any kind of university backing me up. And so I have a keen feeling for what it means to be constantly reskilling yourself. The pandemic has been very good to me because it has normalized remote work, which means that for the first time in years, companies have been hiring me to do testing on a part-time basis as a super senior tester. So I have recent project experience doing automation in the testing realm and doing other kinds of consulting on actual projects, whereas before companies couldn't afford to hire me to come out to their location and sit around there because it was just too expensive. So this pandemic has really opened up some opportunities to people like me to get some fresh, practical experience, which has driven a new round of learning for me. And for the first time last week, I taught a class about using a tool. I'd never done that before. I've been teaching for 30 years. I make my living as a teacher of testing, but I've never done a class where I've taught how to use someone else's tool, something I didn't write myself. Usually I focus on skills. But when I suggest the testing tribe approached me and suggested that could I do a hands-on workshop, I thought, what have I never done before? And I chose that because I wanted to build a skill in a particular tool that I wanted to learn. And I didn't really know much about the tool. So I said, how about if I do a seminar on how to use this tool, which is a tool called JQ that I wanted to learn. And it did the trick. The fact that I had to get up and perform and not look stupid in front of other people really focused my mind and got me to study and innovate using this tool. And now I have a little GitHub repository with examples of how to use JQ. And that is a little example of how I drive my ongoing reskilling as the world changes. As I just promised to teach a class on the subject that I need to learn, and bada bing, the knowledge flows into my head because I'm so terrified of looking like a fool in front of people if I'm not prepared. As for AI.
All right. So Jane, let me come back to you. So let me throw out my first question to my three panelists here. And Rob, I'd like to start with you. So relative to what James has introduced, it's very akin to my first question, and is what compels you or about these trends, AI or layoffs or both? What is the compelling aspect of either of those that either causes you to tell your clientele, Rob, whether it be your students or Cindy, your potential employees that come in, or James, your students and clients? Were you compelled to tell them or advise them either out of caution or of maybe opportunity? So Rob, I'll start with you. You're on mute.
Did I find the mute button?
You got it. You're up.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know about the term compelled, but I do find myself very often reminding people of the cyclic nature of the universe that we're in. One of the first books on software engineering that I acquired was, I think it was called Bell and Newell. And I bought that somewhere in like the 80s, early 80s. And it basically is all about cycles, and it showed how the technologies evolved so much. And I was just chatting with some people about the number of programming languages that I'd have to learn, and there was over 30 in the list that I had. And did I master any of them? I don't think so. Did I learn? Yeah, I'm dangerous in a lot of programming languages, and I know they're going to change, and tomorrow they're going to change. And so the thing I'm compelled to tell people is the change is going to happen. Technologically, it's going to change. Don't get attached to it. Structurally, it's going to change. Don't get attached to it. But what you should get attached to is value propositions and things that are fundamentals that add value. In terms of like this AI, that's wonderful. It's beautiful. I don't find it a threat or an opportunity. I think it's a change. It's great. Finally, we can anchor into something new and start seeing how we can maybe use it to our advantage or be cautious about it. This is all stuff for me, opportunity to learn. In terms of layoffs, it's the same type of thing that I've learned, that my great mentors taught me, that we're always either going to go up or going to go down. It's going to be one of the two. And it's great when you're in that hiring frenzy and building teams and everything, but there's that downtime too. My personal record was 35 people that I had to lay off personally. And I tell you, it was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life, because I spent all of that time helping each and every one of them try to find a new job. And it killed me. And I realized, holy cow, I got to decouple myself from this. I can't personally get engaged in it. It's part of the reality of cycles. So
Yep.
Those are the things I'm sort of compelled to talk about, those value type of things.
Very good. Value prop and cyclical nature. Okay, so Cindy, since if Rob's right and we're in this downturn, right, what are you telling potential folks that come in to Portage with resumes and hopefulness?
Yeah, exactly. And I think hopefulness is really key no matter what you're doing. I completely agree that everything is a cycle, and I don't necessarily look at it as up or down. I see it as circular. So at this point, when you are faced with a layoff, if you've already been laid off, it remains the same game that it has been since the dawn of time. And that really is the mind game. So you still have to be 100% focused on yourself, what you are passionate about, and how you can drive that passion to point you in the right direction so that you can land happily in something new. And it may be, as we talk about change, it may be totally different than what you could have ever imagined. So I see this as an exciting time, actually.
Yeah. Okay, James, if Cindy is right, what's your response to how you're advising your students or even your clientele?
I tell them all hiring decisions are personal decisions, no matter how it looks. People hire or don't hire out of fear or avarice. And so you want to be someone who presents himself as valuable, and you have to be honest about that, or if you get hired, it's going to be a lot of stress and really difficult for you to keep up the act. But the key thing, one of the key things there is when you're rejected for a job, never take that personally. I saw at Apple Computer, when I was a manager there, so many dumb reasons why people weren't given a job that I can never take it seriously when I'm rejected. If I don't get the job, I'm like, well, for all I know, it was somebody who didn't like my beard. They don't like people who wear glasses. They only work with people who have PhDs, or they never work with people who have PhDs and they thought that I had one. Or they don't like a guy with a scratchy voice. Or my hair's too short. I don't have a nose ring. I have too many nose rings. Whatever. There's all kinds of dumb reasons. And so I can't fight that. It's just the way of the world. What I can do is realize that I don't need everyone in the world to hire me. I need the right person to hire me, the person who sees the value that I have and looks at how much I cost and says, for what he's providing, that's a deal. That's budget price. Yes. And that kind of connection is what you want to make. I think everything Cindy said is absolutely right. You were talking even before this meeting started, Cindy, and I think what you're saying has an excellent vibe to it. I think you seem to be tying into the inherently social and psychological nature of all this. And so don't worry too much about algorithms when you're trying to get hired. Any reasonable algorithm anyway is not going to screen you out if you have the basics. But you need to emphasize what's special about you and your energy and how you can come in and save that company.
And do you mind if I just add something to that, James?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what you're really talking about when you're saying you really have to be able to go in, you have to have that connection with the person that's making the hiring decision. You have to be able to show them who you really are. And that's why in every conversation that you're having, either with a recruiter, a potential hiring manager, with that friend who just landed the job at the company that you want to be able to work for, you have to already know yourself. You have to already know what drives you. You have to have already done the work on yourself. So instead of getting all caught up in a flurry about what next coding language should I know? And should I jump into machine learning, or should I stay in AI, or should I go into deep learning? Where should I go? First, do the work on yourself, so that when you do step into a room or when you do step onto a video call, you are 100% there, who you are, and that right person can make that right decision about you.
You know, when you do that, Cindy, you're not competing with 100,000
Exactly.
other people. You're competing with a much smaller group of people because you're letting your uniqueness, your unique combination. Maybe you're out there saying, but there's nothing unique about me. I'm not the best coder. I'm not the best at mathematics. I'm not the best at social skills. What I found is it's not being the best at any one thing. It's the unique mix.
Right.
The unique
And
mix of things that makes
the longevity
you
equation
special.
right there. That's the longevity.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's something else to know about yourself too in this day and age. The whole landscape has changed. You talked about, for instance, you mentioned there's no algorithm that's going to decline you, that's going to weed you out. I actually think that there are algorithms that are going to weed you out. So you do have to still play that game, right? You have to do the boilerplate resume to make sure all the keywords are there. If you look on the job description and it says bachelor's degree required, you might put the words bachelor degree somewhere in your resume. It might say, don't currently have a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
But we still have to play that game that's been manufactured for us, and that's fine. But the human component and doing that work on your humanness is truly your success factor. And that is going to be the longevity key for you when you do land that role.
Good. So Rob, if Cindy and James are making some good points about the human side of things, the hard technical skill side of things, from your point of view as somebody who writes a curriculum for students, how does that fit in with what Cindy is suggesting too, that we also have to be relevant to clients' needs?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time worrying about vocabulary, and I inadvertently sometimes hurt feelings of people who really buy into certain practices that have words that they're really attached to. So I'm going to use words that are probably not the best words, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But I break the skills into two sets, right? One I call the soft skills, one I call the hard skills. It's not a good terminology, but so many of the folks that I've dealt with are concerned about all this collaboration, soft skill stuff. And I think that is basically necessary for anyone in almost any job to master and be really good at that and express their ability to collaborate and work with people to get things done. But the hard skills is, how do you collaborate technically to solve problems? That's an engineering thing. That's not something that you basically just go and I don't know, like build popsicle stick bridges with your friends and celebrate with demo parties and stuff like that. You really got to get there and say, how do I solve problems with people? So I basically try to suggest that people, and I think it's not a two-tier approach, but basically show how you have used things that are identified as skills. And people, by the way, screw up on CVs and resumes all the time by putting a list of tools and calling it skills. It's ridiculous. That's a tool, not a skill. The skill is what James was talking about, is how do you use the tool to do something of value. That's the skill. So how did you use these things to get something done of value? Emphasize that in your discussion of the technical things that you do. Show that you have worked with other people to get the job done. Not that you're a superstar, I am the best Python programmer in the Galactic Empire, look at what I can magically do. That doesn't get things done in the real world. You need a lot of people working together and collaborating. So I sort of emphasize that.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm answering your question or getting deviated away from it.
I want to say this about soft and hard skills. I think it's a reasonable distinction. And
that's the words that I'm tricky with, though.
Yeah, and I want to suggest, but when I've heard it criticized as, well, like, is it really even a meaningful distinction? The way I think about it is, hard skills are named hard skills because they relate to solutions that when you come up with them, it is clear and uncontroversial that you have solved the problem. Like when you add 2 and 2 and you get 4, that's a hard skill because there's no controversy about, did you solve the problem? Yeah. Soft skills, soft really means fuzzy. And it means that you could be good at it, or maybe you're not there's controversy about whether you've actually solved the problem or not. Some people, like for instance, I thought I was a good manager until I managed really difficult people who were difficult for me. And then I realized management is super hard. If your standard is I can manage anyone, management is a really difficult skill. It's a soft skill in the sense that I can never win an Olympic medal in management because we couldn't agree on how to score it. And that in that sense, it's a soft skill, not because it's not a real skill, not because it's not difficult. It's hard in the sense of being difficult, but it's not hard in the sense of being easy to tell if someone's doing a good job. And so I do think it's a useful distinction. Maybe there are better words that someone could propose for this division, but it's a real division.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Cindy, are you seeing something in your clients in preparing the right talent to meet your client demands, a particular hard skill like machine learning or some kind of model-based approach to creating a test coverage outline? You know, the specific mechanics of things that clients are asking for these days.
Yeah, that is a great question. I'm just going to let you know that right now, what I'm seeing in the industry is that we have a lot of companies that have invested over the past 10, 15, sometimes 20 years into a set of frameworks, a set of tools, a methodology, a corporate culture in a lot of cases. And so what I'm finding with those hiring managers that are coming out of those companies and asking for support is that they're kind of hamstringed by what's already in place. So they're asking for, they use Selenium WebDriver and they still need people that can code in Java, right? So everything tends to be, what a hiring manager is asking for tends to be not really an industry division, if you will, but more specific to what they have to support in their environment. Now, some of the companies that are resource rich have an opportunity to set up maybe some research or try some different things. And in those cases, we're starting to get some asks for some unique languages or unique approaches. But right now, the big guys that are still hiring and that still have tests right here onshore, they're really limited by what their company has already invested into the infrastructure.
Good point.
So that's kind of what I'm personally seeing right now. And I know it changes if I'm working with our West Coast clients and our West Coast companies. That's one story. If you're kind of in the middle of the country right now, there seems to be just a little more flexibility and more openness to trying new things. So they're asking for some people that, have they been working with AI? Have they supported those types of initiatives? And then when I head further east, when I'm back on the East Coast, especially with some like fintech, for instance, they have these like hard and true infrastructures. They have hard and true regulations and regulatory issues that they have to address. So they're super slow to kind of move into the direction of new technology and new ways of doing things. So that's kind of what I'm finding, right, is it changes overnight, to be honest. Like somebody might get an influx of investment funds and suddenly they have an R&D team that's being spun up and they're asking for totally different things. So
Okay, awesome, great answer. Okay, we're halfway through. I'd like to open it wide open now to anybody in the audience. I see we have some esteemed guests here in the audience. Hi, Adam White. Hello, Michael Bolton. Great to see you guys. The floor is open. If anyone has a question for any of my panelists, fire away. What are your concerns?
Hey, John,
what is your experience?
Can I pile on? This is Brian Goudreau, and a lot of you have known me in the past. I want to pile on, if you would let me. I've been taking some notes on what you guys are saying, and I want to springboard off what you guys all said are true. And Cindy in particular, and all of you guys, I honestly think that a key part of the quality discipline right now is to get out of our own swim lane. You know, the swim lane model where we all think, okay, do this, do that, do that. And I think you're right. The managers right now, they're going after a tactical, but a lot of times when you land in that environment, you're going to be asked to be, in my case, even at Seattle Children's, product owner, test lead, agile scrum lead, business analysis. You basically codify and do a whole proof of concept with coding. And I'll switch daily into one of those, working with the teams I am, and we've got to get to a comfort space where we're able to do that. To the points made earlier, represent yourself and make that connection as the capability, because it does start personal, but we also got to be not as limiting on that. Start with one pivot, but
why do we have to be not as limited in doing that? Because it seems to me that you're talking about a particular kind of technical worker who is a generalist.
Yes.
But when you're a generalist, you're giving up on the value of specialism. And
not at all.
I
disagree with that. And here's why I disagree. The T-shaped model still applies. You can have depth in a practice while still connecting at a team level with the enterprise that you're working at.
Okay,
I hear what you're saying. I don't want to saturate ourselves, but I think to be viable and to also that change agent that we are moving into culturally, technologically, this or that, I think we need to be open to that value proposition. And I'm not saying this is 100% solves everything, but I think this is an angle, a spoke in the wheel that I've seen valuable in my own organization and other organizations and teams, and being part of the, the conferences and people. There's a resonance there, I think. So I'm just.
Well, here's something, Brian. Here's something that I'd like to offer. I can write code. He can. If you want me to write code for your production level product, something out in the production level, you are making a big mistake, because that's not what floats my boat. That's not my motivation. That's not my interest. My interest is in finding trouble with stuff. Now, okay, he's just weird and quirky. right? But I'm just a strange, weird guy. But I can also assure you that when the opposite phenomenon is in place, that is somebody who loves writing code and is not that interested in finding trouble, you're going to have stuff that is poorly tested.
Good.
Guaranteed. Guaranteed, because anything that I'm not into fundamentally, motivationally, is going to be a side hustle for me. And I'm not going to do it as well or as capably. Let me offer a way out of this, though, because I think that what you're talking about is something that's worth considering, but I'd like to reframe it a little bit.
Okay.
And that is to say that I think what you're suggesting is that everybody on the team should have a level expertise in many things, up to a level that Harry Collins refers to as interactional expertise. That is to say, I'm not sure what you do, Brian. I assume you're a manager of some kind. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I want to be expert in talking about management and in talking about things that managers need to do and need to know, without necessarily being, although in this case, I did develop some expertise as a manager, without necessarily being able to do the work. I want to be able to relate to you and to be able to understand what you're doing and what you're talking about, what motivates you, what drives you, what you need in order to get things done. But it is, I think, foolish for me, it's foolish to me to believe that everybody can have what Harry calls contributory expertise. That is to say, not just be able to speak the language of the domain, but be able to get work done in that domain. So I'm with you on the T-shaped bit when it comes to interactional expertise. When it comes to contributory expertise, if we insist that everybody has to have contributory expertise in every domain, what we're going to get is a watered down version of everything.
Right. I totally get where you're coming from. And I've intentionally held my back from being director, manager to that level because I wanted to stay connected and tactical, but and also I know the limits of if I start thinking, and being accountable and responsible at the manager director level, honestly, then that's where I'll stay. Have to totally get that. That's why I've intentionally been a little bit more on the ground level. But I think you're right. I was just trying to frame it from what I see. I've seen people adapt in our own culture. Maybe this is more healthcare, that constriction we see where people are trying to save money, and now managed services scope is rapidly expanding even faster than the SAL can be written in terms of trying to find that collaborative, business analysis versus let's go into coding and POC versus making sure we've got a quality framework, being improved upon. All are true. So,
thanks. Go ahead, Cindy. Yep. No, go ahead, Cindy.
I was going to ask Brian, so right now in your environment, just thinking about the desire to have folks that can wear many hats and wear each of them equally well. How do you encourage, from a talent acquisition perspective, how do you encourage those like recent grads or people that, that are maybe 2 or 3 years into the industry? How do you encourage them to sign on to your team without kind of setting them up for failure, if you will?
It's a good point. I think understanding, well, it kind of comes back to people like you that write the right requirements, right? Knowing, like in your case, and you'd go back to a group and say, what are the managed services? What are people fighting for to maintain their contract side? Now, what is your role coming in to enable these teams? If you can represent, as funny as it seems, you want to help the managed contract people support where they're trying to go, as well as the primary stakeholder of the business. That's going to reflect probably the most value and keep you, even if the other ones lose their contract and can't sustain. Does that make sense?
I mean, it does make sense. And even from the managed, when you're working on these managed projects and the contract, and trying to get into all those holes that need filling within the organization, kind of expand your footprint. So from a recruiting perspective, one thing that I'm finding just right now in the industry, especially with the layoffs, is even when we're in these layoff cycles and the hire cycles, we still have the natural cycle of humanity. So we have the people that are kind of growing up, right? And they've graduated and they're ready to start their careers, or they're 2 years in. And so I was just thinking from that perspective, how do we fit those people into an environment of wear many hats and still have them be successful?
If they're starting out, evidence a lot of things, the organizations, one of the things we look for as hiring is show me evidence where you've volunteered time, that you're passionate about something. Show me that website that you volunteered to, and was it well organized? I know that sounds kind
demonstrating stretch,
demonstrating outward tangible, right? And if you show diversity in that, to the coding point that you said, absolutely you want to be best at breed at that, but then can you communicate your design, and can you communicate the business application of that and the sustainability in a less than mature environment? See, these are all things that people in the big picture are going to want to look for. So, the better you represent that, in my opinion, the better chance you're going to have. At the end of the day, you still got to feel passionate, want to come to work every day. But those are some examples off the top of my head that I can think of that would, I think, apply to what you're looking for, right?
Okay. All right. Michael Wolf, you want to get in on this?
Sure. I kind of tying something Michael tied back to Cindy, and I'll throw something out at Cindy too, because I want to hear what you're telling those people that you're asking Brian about the early careers. But let me get this off my chest. Zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance. There was a question. We're all oldsters here. Are you a good welder? And the comeback, as I remember it, was there's two kinds of good welders. There's the one in the shop that gets the one-off crashed bike, never going to do that same thing again. And there's one on the production line that does the same thing every day. Now, one is good at the ad lib, the other is good at perfecting a certain thing. That helped me see that I was not an assembly line developer. I consider myself a developer, but don't ask me to write your production code either. I'm a different kind of good developer than that kind of good developer.
I like to say I'm a sprinter and not a marathoner. When it comes,
and so it goes back to Cindy's point of like, know yourself. And this is the second time I've heard it today, the third, because my morning writing, I wrote it to myself, had a call this afternoon, and somebody sort of put that back in my face. That's not what you know, it's who you be. So know yourself and be yourself. Spot on, Cindy. And I'm not the production welder software guy, but I'm damn good at software.
Exactly. And that is a fabulous book. And that's another thing that you asked me, what do I say to people that are calling, that are just coming out of college, or when we do the career fairs, we love.
I needed that point in my career.
Yeah. And really that is key. Like those first couple of years are all about discovering yourself. Are you somebody, when you come to me and you've recently graduated and you're like, well, my ultimate goal is to be a manager. Okay, well, let's revisit that in 24 months. And let's find out what's been in it.
Oh, that's important, because I wanted to be a manager when I was young. And it turned out I didn't really want to be a manager. I wanted to be listened to. Yeah. And managers are listened to. But it turned out you don't have to be a manager to be respected and listened to. And if you're not a manager, you have less responsibility of the unhappy kind. You have only the happy kinds of responsibilities. So after 9 years of being a manager, I was very eager to let my brother be the manager. John used to work for me. And now when we work together, he is always the manager, because I love working for him and I don't want to be responsible for leadership.
But he's the kind of manager that listens well, not is listening to.
He's the kind of manager that makes you feel like you're a prized panda in a very well-funded zoo. And you get all the bamboo shoots, and everyone comes and admires.
As long as you produce little pandas, dude.
Yeah, that's right. So this is a nice segue to an anonymous question we had about the imposter syndrome, and what's your advice to people suffering with this? Because James and Rob, that I've suffered with this. I have a degree in journalism, and James, you helped me get my start in testing, and here 28 years later, I managed to be a director at eBay and hold my own in the technical world, but it is a struggle. So any tips you could offer to be good in a team, or a way to keep getting better despite feeling that you're not good enough, especially in this climate of downturn when really skilled people are getting laid off, and maybe the imposter who is actually doing a good job is left staying.
Can I just, do you mind if I jump in on that?
Yeah, please.
So, because this comes up a lot. It actually comes up with every single person I've worked with at some point, either throughout the initial recruiting process, just trying to discover who they are, what they're really after, where they're going to fit. And then also once they land that role, the calls that, I get 2 weeks in, a month in, 3 months in, and especially right at that 11-month mark, that's when I really get these questions of, hey, I've been here almost a year and I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And my response to that traditionally has been, great. You are absolutely taking a good look at the playing field. You're recognizing the holes, you're recognizing the gaps. Now let's talk about how to mitigate the impact of that awareness on your system. And it really goes back to understanding yourself. Right. So I actually think imposter syndrome, and I know it was kind of a little bit of a fad for a while where, everything was about imposter syndrome. Every headline on LinkedIn, in the newspapers and all the business magazines. I'm like, this is fantastic. You need to have imposter syndrome. It's telling you that you're aware. And then the next step is to take that awareness and do something with it, whether it's
I was just going to say, Cindy, I've never had imposter syndrome. I don't have imposter syndrome. And the reason why I've never had it, even when I was the youngest guy in Apple Computer, is because I always assumed that everyone else is faking it. I always thought
that too,
they're the ones faking it. I'm just inexperienced, but they're actually faking it because I'm honest. I try to be honest about what I am and what I do. I know this stuff. I don't know that stuff. I just felt like when I got in, I'd just say, well, I didn't get in by like BSing my way. You know what? I read a book about management called The 1 Minute Manager on the way to the interview at Apple Computer. And I had no management experience at all, but I didn't pretend to have management experience. I just said, here's what I think about management. And I don't know if they asked me if I had just read a book on the way to the interview, but if they had, I'm sure I wouldn't have lied about it.
So there's a new dimension here, James, about fake it till you make it with ChatGPT. You could now fake it, and until there's algorithms that said, oh, this was created by ChatGPT. What's your response to those who now see ChatGPT as a way to mask? Not only, it's not about being humble and being authentic with your limitations, but people who say, oh, it's a new chance for me to fake it.
Well, my request is please don't fake it.
Yeah.
Don't fake it. It's a devil's bargain. It's be honest and work at your craft. And if you're honest about how you work at your craft, people will appreciate that you're working at your craft. And I just don't see a need to fake anything, and especially passing off ChatGPT's work as if it were your own is it's a dastardly thing to do. It's plagiarism.
Plagiarism.
No, please don't do that.
I thought I had imposter syndrome, but I realized I was just fooling myself.
Adam, can I get you in? You've had your hand up for a while. I want to recognize you. And I'll come back to you, Michael, if you had more.
Something that, like, because I was looking at the topic and it's your skills in times of downturn and AI and all this stuff, is I'm noticing a trend where I'm working with companies. I decided to go independent in October, and I'm doing like contract consulting work, and I'm seeing a lack of what I will call basic debugging skills and systems thinking skills in some of the startups that I'm joining. So I'm a startup guy. I've spent most of my career in startups, but we always went super deep. And I think I was relating a little bit to what Brian said, because it sounds a little bit like wanting T-shaped people. You want a breadth, but you want a couple of areas where you can go super deep. And I'm finding just this basic lack of like knowing how to troubleshoot something. I had a call with Rob Sabourin this week where he even took me back to and gave me some ideas of based on some systems behavior I'm seeing. So I'm wondering if anybody else is seeing a similar thing. We're getting these boot camps that are coming up. People do 6 weeks and then they jump into coding. And it's like, one of the things I didn't learn in university, or university didn't teach me, was the vast array of things that go on in a software company that's more than just sitting down and writing code in your favorite language every day. John, I know you've experienced it. I've experienced it. You know, build and release and DevOps, that wasn't a thing back then, right? Like, so I'm also hearing a little bit about, you know, people needing to explore different things. I think that's what Cindy was saying, is like, I've been in here a year and I still don't know anything. It's like, yeah, because there's a lot. But I'm more interested to know if anybody's had the same experience with the troubleshooting and the debugging skills and the systems thinking, like really thinking of the software as a system instead of just my little component that I'm working on.
It's a huge problem in the industry. It is lack of certain basic skills, and yet people know Selenium, you know, but they don't have these basic skills of reasoning. Maybe you've seen this too, Cindy. I found that this out at a few years ago at a company. We did a systematic survey of how people were behaving, and one of the things that we found is in this particular company with 25 Scrum teams, what we found is this pattern of young people who were doing programming and all that. And when we asked them what kind of problems they were having, and they told us the kinds of problems they were having, we realized that nobody seemed to know how to solve any problem if it went outside of their Scrum team. I mean, they didn't know certain basics like putting together a little white paper for a proposal to change the processes, and then setting up a meeting and identifying people in other groups that you need to align with. And it's like they were helpless and clueless when it came to solving a problem that goes outside your little team of 5 people or whatever. Have you seen this too, Cindy? Is this something
we had a project last year that our test lead, who has been in the industry for a very long time, and she is fantastic. That's what she was running into. It was an existing established company, but the product was kind of a startup environment product, and they did have some junior devs working on it, and it was a mobile app. And that's exactly what she was running into. So there was some just very basic testing know-how that was lacking on the team. And then from the development perspective, there was really no way for them to communicate with each other what the problem was and how to fix it. And because they were kind of isolated, they were in a little bit of a silo, they didn't have almost the confidence, if you will, to step outside and say, hey, we're struggling, we don't know how to do this, or what needs to be done. Now, I put it out to management and to cultures in general to ask, how are you communicating with your new hires, and how are you communicating with the people on your team that are less experienced? So once somebody is more senior and they have that inner confidence, they already have their inner fire burning, right? That no one's going to put out their fire if they go and ask, hey, how do I do this RFP? And the person responds with a snarty, a snarky comment to them. They're not going to be upset. Their fire is already strong. But you get these young people that are just starting their careers. There's a lot of fear still around them. And so they do stay in that little bubble like you're describing. And the product, sadly for that particular mobile application, it did not go well. And the product ended up being pulled, so it lost its funding.
We should just be lobbing questions at you, Cindy.
What was that?
We should just be lobbing questions at you and have you field all these things. I'm getting a lot out of what you're saying.
Well, it happens. That's all I'm saying. I agree with you. It happens. It's a problem. And it's a training issue. It's an acceptance issue. So once, I mean, I'm old. I've been around for a long time. And it's on me as an elder, if you will. It's on me to practice acceptance. It's on me to create space for somebody who's just maybe 1 or 2 years in the industry to come to me with the questions, right? I have to hold that space. How else are they going to grow?
That's very important. It's the essence of our responsibility, yes, as elders, absolutely.
Michael Bolton, you've had your hand up for a while. We've covered a lot of topics. What's on your mind?
In the age of AI, the reply to that is, it's just everybody relax. AI is software. Anybody who's worried about software replacing their job, especially as a tester, I can speak to that at least. Don't worry about it. It's not good at what it does. Just everybody chill. It'll be fine. Just, for God's sake. Software is not going to replace testers. Software is not going to replace programmers. Software extends our reach. It extends our competence. It extends our incompetence too. If you are the kind of tester who can be replaced by AI, my advice is get out of the business right now. You should have been out of the business a long time ago if you can be replaced by AI in this stage. Take a deep breath, keep working on your skills. Think of AI as lifetime job opportunities, because if you're a skilled tester, we're needed now more than ever in the age of AI.
Michael, I hope you'd be open to me challenging you a bit on that. The thing to worry about is perhaps middle management or upper management perception of AI, much like it is about automation. That automation means better testing, so we'll hire automators. So don't you think that, yeah, AI is just software, it's nothing to worry about, it's going to be buggy and crash. That will be crushed by the supposed value that middle management and upper management thinks of AI being the new silver bullet.
There's if I may say so, an error in your model. And the error in your model is that all middle managers will think that way. We don't have to work for all middle managers. We have to work for one middle manager who recognizes it, as James was saying before. The antidote is simply for us as programmers, as developers, and as middle managers, for that matter, to be so good we can't be ignored. That is how to keep yourself relevant. But if you're a middle manager who thinks that you can replace testers with AI, you as a middle manager can be replaced by AI, and good riddance to you.
Well, I'm a little worried about your answer, Michael, because I think there is danger here. I think I've played with ChatGPT pretty extensively, to the degree where I feel that I think we all need to play with it. We all need to understand its limitations, not because it's super helpful and we should change our jobs with it, but you've got to be able to defend yourself from people who think that you should be using this a lot more. So you have to learn about it so that you can defend yourself. You can't just say, I'm anti-AI, or you say, I'm not worried about AI, but I don't know anything about it. You've got to learn about it. You have to be conversant with its limitations, and you have to be ready to recite those limitations, which, Michael, you have been playing with ChatGPT, haven't you?
I have. I've been playing with Bing too. The Bing thing that Microsoft pushed through on Skype the other day, and it's even more embarrassing than ChatGPT is. Oh my God!
I can just make a comment there. I hate to speak over you. There's a level of stakeholders that is far beyond middle managers. And that's what I'm seeing is people with investment capital that are looking at this AI thing and are helping to seed companies, especially bunches of people with recent degrees at usually PhD level who have been studying this AI stuff from a very academic perspective. And these guys are walking around now with chunks of change that start with $10 million. And that's not middle managers, Michael. That's the people who are going to create the companies that are going to evolve the middle managers. So how do we get the investors to sort of be a little more cautious? I don't know, because they think the more you talk, the more they think this is a great risk, therefore there's going to be a great return. And I have
yes, but there's also going to be a great bloodbath. These people are going to lose shitloads of money. Like
when Unix came out, there was a
that's how the
bloodbath.
industry works.
Yeah,
That's how it works.
And that's
Sometimes
okay.
we just have to be patient.
I think
So
that
wait
that's
for the
okay.
bloodbath to finish.
Robert, I totally agree with you from the startup perspective. There are a lot of folks out there with a lot of coin that want to be part of this revolution that's happening right now. And you are absolutely right as well. There will be a bloodbath in certain areas throughout the industry, right? Certain things will become obsolete as AI evolves and matures. And that's to be expected. So I don't
That's
see it
what I
as
started with the cycle. I just wanted Michael to realize the investors, not the middle managers.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Now, from the management perspective of established companies, the one thing that I am hearing or being asked actually is, do you think it would be beneficial for us to developers who are proficient using these other tools to speed up their coding productivity, right? So there's this idea of, would we be able to take these feature ideas and these new product ideas to market faster if we focused our new hires on developers that had this ability, that this was already established in their tool chest, right? So that's something else that's coming up, this idea of, gosh, it took us 24 months to get this. I have a little bit of a background in medical device technology. It took us 24 months to get this little feature enhancement to market. If we had been able to get that to market in 12 months, we would be sitting on twice the chunk of change, right?
Even operationally, if you look at the IT report from the CIO at Children's, we referenced AI as a tool that we use to enhance operability and savings. And our teams embraced that as a vehicle, like a scaffolding that I saw earlier. I think that's a great point. Use it as a tool, not as a replacement. And it's got lots of possibilities. One more quick comment. Management is becoming middle management to executive leadership. A lot of just recently here, I'm seeing the trend where they're not backfilling executive leadership positions and distributing those decisions to the director middle management layer. So be aware, this may get a little messy for the next 12 months or so.
Okay, Michael Wolf, I'll give you the last question and then I'll throw to my panel to do closing statements. Go ahead.
Well, thanks, Robert, for talking about the $10 million question. I'll talk about one guy because it was coming up in a back channel. The way I've used ChatGPT recently for code, and my partners used it for some marketing material, is it gives me a great starter, but then if I'm doing a loop back with it, it helps me come up with better questions. And that in itself is helpful. Even if it doesn't give better answers, it helps me get better questions. And I've seen that with code. I've seen that with marketing copy, both. So that's my 2-month investment in seeing how that's worked.
All right, so let's go one at a time. I'll take James, you first, then Rob, and then Cindy to close us out. So 1 to 2 minute closing advice, either caution or hopefulness on this array of topics.
Years ago, I had the opportunity to teach a classroom of 10-year-olds a class in critical thinking. I thought that they would be bored Instead, they were very excited, and I was shocked at how competent they were. They were little scientists. It was amazing to watch. And then I started thinking, why don't we just hire 10-year-olds to do all of our work for us? And the answer became apparent after an hour with these folks, and the mess that they made with the cereal boxes that I asked them to critique, that they then tore to pieces, and cereal was all over the place. The answer is you don't hire children not just because of labor laws, but because they are unreliable and they're moody. So you have to supervise them. You have to keep them on track. This is why you don't have them do it. And it ties in with an essay that I read on Ribbon Farm by, I forget the guy's name, Rao, I think is his name. I forget his first name. Anyway.
Venkatesh.
Okay. And he said, AI is not an overlord. Don't think of AI as our overlords that are going to take over. Think of AI as children that we have to smooth out the world for these children to be able to function in it. And ever since then, that model has really helped me. So when someone says, oh, here's this wonderful, AI vehicle with these tiny little wheels, it's just going to roll over the mud. I just picture it just turning over and getting stuck. It's going to need a whole phalanx of people, of humans, to allow it to work. That means we must develop vigorous, critical thinking about the products of AI, the processes of AI. I'm worried that there won't be enough critical thinking, but we need testers and people who think like testers more than ever in this new world.
All right, Robert, what do you think?
Well, thank you. That's very insightful. I will say less stuff. First thing, I want to basically remind people about the importance of fundamentals and tying that to value. And I think that's sometimes it's almost obvious, except that fundamentals evolve with time. So I've spent some time with this workshop on software testing fundamentals evolution, especially with my partner in this, Ben Simo, whom I'm sure many of you know. And we looked at old testing conferences and what people used to present and talk. And one of my favorite testing conferences was the 1903 testing conference that took place in Philadelphia related to the testing of steam locomotives. And one of the big takeaways from that conference in 1903 is not to look at the working train, but to look at the reject bin and find out from what's not working, what to do better next time. In 1903, that was the big conclusion. The reference book I'm checking here on my desk is 1892 is confirming the scientific basis for that. So
they were obsessed with tools, though, weren't they?
They were crazy about tools.
just like today, they hardly talk about skills. They talk about tools.
But they made their own tools, so that it was the skill of making the tool. Ignorance is a skill that we've got to consider. And I've always told people ignorance is my superpower. I want people to realize that they're not going to know everything. And if you have this awareness of your ignorance, you can work and collaborate. And this is where you get to those debugging and troubleshooting skills. Work with other people, take that ignorance and try to figure out how to use that and leverage that to your advantage. Remove your biases. That's the leverage of the ignorance stuff. And the last one I want to mention, and I'm looking at a lot of people, I try to influence about 400 undergraduates entering our profession every year. And I get to know some of them very well. But the one thing that I see on the uprise, which is driving me up a wall, and I can't stand it, it's this thing that where people have this sort of feeling that something is owed to them, and they have this entitlement. Because I worked hard, I deserve more money. That's crap. You worked hard and you did the wrong thing hard. That doesn't make it the right thing. Do the right thing well and learn how to Put checks and balances into your personal software process. Be independent of the crap that the universe is throwing at you, but always learn and adapt and evolve, and never forget stuff. As I was talking to Adam this week, simple things like retrospectives, look at bugs that happened and how we fixed them, and then let's learn how not to inject them in the future. So anyhow, those are my little parting comments. It was wonderful to be part of this panel, and I loved all the comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Robert. All right, Cindy, bring us home.
All right, John.
Either cautionary or optimistic.
And I'm just going to keep it super short because I really just want to focus on the optimism here. So if everyone will just take a great look at themselves in the mirror before they step in front of their computer in the morning or wherever it is they're doing their work, and really ask themselves, am I doing what I want to be doing? And if I am I doing it well? If I'm not, then maybe I need to take some time and figure out what that thing is that I want to be doing. It might not be being involved in AI. It might not be participating in tests anymore, but take the time so that you can be the example for your team, so that you can be the mirror for your management, so that you can be testing and producing products in the technical realm that are beneficial and work the way we want them to work. So do that first, stay optimistic. The layoffs are going to happen. They will continue to happen, either more frequently, and then they'll eventually die down. But if you just stay true to who you are and what you enjoy doing, I mean, I can almost guarantee you that the right fit is going to happen and the longevity will stay there for you. I'm talking to a lot of people right now. If there's anybody on this meeting that is kind of in that place where they're looking for something new because they've been laid off, or maybe they're stuck in a place that just they know is not right, let's have a conversation. Let's put a plan in place. Like, start pointing yourself in that right direction. So I'm all about optimism. I am thrilled to be alive right now at this point in humanity's evolution. It is mind-blowing for me. And I hope that other people can kind of share in just that, in the awe of it, because we are at this point in humanity's existence where anything is possible, anything. So that's what I'm going to leave us with.
John, you asked her to bring it home and she did.
Oh,
You brought it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, panelists. It's always great to talk with you. Thank you, guests, for joining this webinar. This was an experiment. I think it was successful enough that we do it again, maybe to combine PM SIG and QA SIG with the help of Shelley and Krista and Joe. Thank you for being part of this experiment. And the recording will be posted later on. You'll probably see it up on CoreDev's LinkedIn post, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I posted the link to pm-sig.org where you can contact the three panelists. I'm Jon Bach. It's been a pleasure to be your facilitator, and we'll see you all next time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I thought it was a very exciting meeting, and to have the privilege of had this distinguished panel has been wonderful, and we're going to have to start looking for the next one. I'd be really interested in your feedback on what you thought about the format, because I thought it was exciting and fun, and I also liked all the side notes and the input that everybody jumped in with.
Me too.
Yeah.
Thanks for sponsoring, Joe.
Yep.
Right.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Have a great one.
Yep.
Bye.
Enjoy the eve. Thanks all.